Good evening and welcome to 1010, your top 10 news in 10 minutes. I'm Andy Hong. I hope you're all excited for tomorrow's vernal equinox, which means that the day is going to be almost exactly split between 12 hours of day and 12 hours of night. So while I guide you through this week's news, I want you to think about how you're going to use the extra daylight hours. And when you're feeling down, just remember that the days will only keep getting brighter. And the vernal equinox generally denotes the beginning of spring. Well, the East Coast is really starting their spring with a bang. Another cold front is due to sweep through poor Canada and down into the Great Lakes, New England, and the Carolinas, which have already seen record-breaking temperatures and snowfall this past winter. Fortunately, there will be some sunshine by Sunday, although cold air will continue to move through the east. In the Middle East, a devastating attack on a museum in Tunisia claimed almost 20 lives on Wednesday. Most of the victims were tourists. Tunisia, as you may or may not remember, was the cradle of the Arab Spring revolutions. It was the first country to protest against its dictator out of numerous others that followed. Naturally, many were dismayed to see the symbol of democracy come under attack from terrorists with their unsettling fetish for attacking museums. So far, the ISIS branch in Libya and the Al-Qaeda branch in Algeria have both claimed responsibility, but it is not clear yet who the perpetrator was. A couple of arrests have been made and a full-scale investigation is underway. There was also political upheavals in the Middle East, namely involving the rocky relationships between Iran, Israel, and the United States. In Israel, incumbent Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was re-elected with some consequences in terms of Israeli-American relations. Leading up to the elections, Netanyahu made some provocative remarks on warning Israel against Arabs voting in large numbers and refusing to accept a two-state solution to the Palestine conflict. In other words, Palestinians would be denied statehood under any circumstances. After the election results came out, however, Netanyahu withdrew that statement about refusing a two-state solution. The statements and subsequent reversals greatly concerned the White House, of course. Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Obama have been on unsteady terms for a while, with tensions escalating when Netanyahu gave a speech before Congress speaking out against the nuclear deal with Iran without the president's permission. Of course, I'm talking about the groundbreaking nuclear deal that always seems so close within our reach. According to CBS, the framework being negotiated would limit Iran's nuclear development for up to 20 years, with the most stringent technical limits hitting during the first 10 years. Additional monitoring would continue into at least the second decade. However, earlier this month, in a blatantly unconstitutional yet still unimpeachable move, 47 Republican senators warned Iranian leaders that they could unwind the deal as soon as Obama leaves the office in 2 years. Even with all of this interference, American, Chinese, Russian, German, British, French, and Iranian diplomats are hoping to come to an agreement by the end of the month on March 31st. Back at home, the Boston bombing trial is still ongoing as the defense lost significant ground yesterday on trying to portray Dzhokhar Tsarnaev as a mere pawn influenced by his older brother Tamerlane. The prosecutors showed the jury how Dzhokhar's laptop was filled with radical Islamist rhetoric, official jihadi magazines, hate-filled speeches by cleric Anwar al-Awlaki, and bomb-making instructions that date back 5 years. The trial is uncovering new details about the tragedy every day, and we at 1010 will keep a close note of it for the coming weeks. One of the more significant steps the United States took to prevent these types of terrorist attacks was strict monitoring of airport security, especially by the TSA, the Transportation Safety Agency. However, according to CNN, a recent government report showed that the TSA let a convicted felon and former member of a domestic terror group through TSA pre-check at a U.S. airport last summer. It is reported that a TSA officer actually recognized the felon and reported it to a superior, but the superior did nothing about it. Now, this is absolutely ridiculous. Well, our Secret Service can only seem to get drunk or have their earpieces off for private calls while defending the nation's president, so we shouldn't be surprised. And just weeks after knife attacks on Mark Lippert, the American ambassador to South Korea, Japan is also on high alert as a man in Okinawa has been arrested for making bomb threats to the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo. There have also been death threats to Caroline Kennedy, the U.S. ambassador to Japan. There have always been protests over the American military presence in Okinawa, but it seems that the tensions are being exacerbated with the visit of the First Lady Michelle Obama and former President Bill Clinton. Speaking of Asia, Russia is also expecting a very special little foreign dignitary, namely North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. Kim is tentatively scheduled to visit Moscow in time for the victory celebrations in May 9th, specifically the celebrations for the glorious motherland's victory in Great Patriotic War, or in other words, the Soviet victory in World War II. Sorry for the terrible Russian accent. Should Kim actually make the trip, that will be his first foreign trip since becoming dictator in 2011. But of course, this could turn out to be that cliched movie scene, where a loner is invited to a popular guy's party and becomes all excited only to be disappointed later on that nobody was really expecting him. Putin already invited 68 world leaders for his celebrations, so Kim might end up being a total loner. Still, this does not change the fact that Russia and North Korea have become much closer allies these past few years, just as China became softer towards South Korea. Interesting times indeed. But of course, while Russia is extending an olive branch in the east, it's basically at war in the west against Ukraine. After months and months of fighting and ineffective ceasefires, peace treaties, and sanctions, the United Kingdom took another step toward countering the Russian influence on the Ukraine crisis by sending in military advisors and over $22 million in additional humanitarian aid. While this Cold War drama unfolds in Russia, detective drama is just breaking in the United States. Millionaire Robert Durst was charged with first-degree murder of Susan Berman, a close friend of his. The case had gone cold for more than a decade, but an interview with Durst in the HBO series The Jinx uncovered new clues and even a confession from Durst. After reviewing letters and handwriting recovered from the time and area of the murder that seemed to match Durst's profile, Durst reportedly hurriedly left to go use the bathroom. The catch is, he forgot to take off his microphone. While in the bathroom, he reportedly said, "What the hell did I do? Killed them all, of course." There is more evidence to suggest Durst's criminal guilt. His wife, Kathleen, also went missing in 1982, and he had shot and dismembered a neighbor in 2001. He was acquitted of the latter on grounds of self-defense, but of course he is assumed innocent until proven guilty in this country, and let's hope that the judicial system works its magic. And after the outcry over formaldehyde-tainted wood flooring, California is once again facing a similar situation, but with something much more near and dear to the Californians' heart. Wine. Yes, a class action lawsuit that had just begun to be filed yesterday details very high levels of arsenic in popular wine brands such as Trader Joe's $2 Chuck White Zinfandel at 3 times the limit, Menage a Trois Moscato at 4 times the limit, and Franzia White Grenache at 5 times the EPA limit for arsenic in drinking water. California and arsenic seem to go hand in hand. There were also discoveries of arsenic-tainted apple juice and rice as well. Many wine distributors and producers are resisting the suit, but hopefully the entire issue will be brought to light and the deadly poison issue will be solved. Finally, for tonight's science news, the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, has approved testing for Amazon's drone delivery program. According to the BBC, operating drones for commercial services is illegal in the United States, but the FAA is still making revisions to the stringent drone regulations that it passed recently. This is a very novel field in commercial aviation technology, and it's good that the government is showing interest. Even if Amazon doesn't successfully implement drone technology to deliver goods, lessons will still be learned from its mistakes, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is the beauty of science. And that would also mark the end of this week's 1010 News. I'm Andy Hong. Make sure to like us on Facebook and YouTube, and remember that today was the deadline for purchasing AP tests. If you haven't, well, I suggest you hurry up and see if you can still sign up. And as always, I'll see you next week with more of your top 10 news in 10 minutes. Stay educated.